Hello, and welcome back to the Cisco Learning Network podcast. We continue our conversation with Yusuf Bhaiji, Senior Manager of Global Certifications at Cisco, as he now focuses on the changes being made to the Expert or CCIE level of certification. This is the fourth episode we speak with Yusuf about the changes being made to the Cisco certification program. So if you're interested in hearing about the general and high-level changes being made as a whole, please listen to the first episode in our series. And if you're looking for more information about the changes being made specifically to the CCNA and CCNP levels of certification, please check out episodes 2 and 3 in our series. Now, we'll get a deep dive with Yusuf about what's changing in the Expert or CCIE level of certification. So let's listen in to the next part of this interview between Cisco Learning Network Community Manager Brett Lovins and Yusuf Bhaiji as they talk about the Expert level certification changes that go into effect February 2020. Here's Brett.
Well, I'm going to say welcome back because this is another podcast from the Cisco Learning Network. My name is Brett Lovins, Community Manager, and Yusuf is returning, and we're resuming our conversation about the changes to the Cisco certification program. We've talked about associate and professional level certs, as well as an overall high-arching podcast as well. Yusuf, I'd love for you to just dig right in and speak to the CCIE program as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brett, for having me. It's been nice to do this podcast for the Cisco Learning Network. So first important change is that the CCIE framework is evolved, it's changing, and we are really kind of excited to share these details with you. But before we go into that, how is it changing and what are the changing, the question was why is it changing? And as we all know, technology is changing so fast and we are constantly getting hammered with more skills, more requirements, and engineers are required to have a wide variety of skills. And particularly if you think about the expert level certification, it's even more kind of pressing that you need to know everything across the hood, under the hood. So it is kind of very challenging in that sense to create a program to cover that wide range. So it's a fine balance between what we call the breadth and depth of the technology, and I think we have striken a good balance in that new expert level program to have that breadth and depth of the knowledge. Because I was sharing earlier with somebody that sometimes I get this question asked that, well, what is the difference between the CCNP and the CCIE certification for even with this lens of the technology change and the expectation of job roles? So one of the most fundamental difference between these two programs is that if you see the four-letter acronym CCNP, Cisco Certified Networking Professional. So focus on the third letter N, Network Professional, right? And for the CCIE, the four-letter acronym is Cisco Certified Internetworking Expert. And my emphasis is again on the third letter, Internetworking. That's the biggest change between these two programs. The CCNP is more about the professional person who has a more vertical approach, more individual technology, and it's not like a compulsory. I mean, that's how the program is structured, that you don't need to be master of everything. You can be just a specialized person in one particular niche area, and you can take in the new CCNP that concentration and be done with it. You take the concentration, take the technology core, the new exam, and get CCNP certified. You don't need to boil the ocean. But on the contrary, on the CCIE certification, the expert level, you need to know a whole lot of how they connect together, which is why we call it internetworking. So you need to know all the different components that make up that technology. So for example, I'm being security guy here, so I can use a security analogy here. So in a security world, there are so many technology components. There is, let's say, the network access, there is cryptography, there is authentication, there is firewall, there is ICE, there is web security, email security, all sorts of things in the security hood. So at the CCNP level, we give you a choice. We give you flexibility that you can pick one area and be an expert in it, or not expert, but professional in it, and then you kind of, have that deeper dive and complete your CCNP journey. But at the expert level, you need to know all of them because that's the demand of the certification. That's the demand of that expert label, that you need to know all of that. So I don't know if that answered your question earlier, but I think I went a little segue here, that I wanted to put that mindset around the difference between the new CCNP program and the CCIE program.
Yeah, so that's all very interesting. So now let's talk about what that means, the CCIE candidate.
Right. So again, very excited to share this because it has been long coming and we've been working on it for almost 2 years now. So the first major change, the what is changing in the CCIE Evolve framework is now the new CCIE program is going to focus on the network life cycle from start to finish, what we call end to end. So the new exam or the new curriculum is going to focus on the full spectrum of the network life cycle. So there are different phases in the network life cycle. So when you start a solution or you're working with a customer, what do you start with first? You start with the design of the network, right? You create the planning and you gather customer requirements and you find the correct solution. That's all designing the solution. Then you go into the deploy phase. You implement the solution. You kind of go at the customer and you deploy it. And then day 2 is your operate. When it's already deployed, the customer is going to start using it in an operation mode. And then you go into the optimization stage, that there could be some tweaks to be done. There could be some evolution in technology. There are some technologies may be replaced or end of life, and you have to kind of evolve it. So that's kind of the full life cycle. The new CCIE evolution is exactly going to focus on that, the complete life cycle. So the new exam is going to focus on the design as well as the deploy, operate, and optimize. Another way to explain that is what we call, in a very technical term, we call day 0, day 1, and day 2 of the network life cycle. Day 0 is when you are still on the paper, you're kind of designing the solution. Day 1 is when you are kind of deploying the solution, and then day 2 is basically when you're maintaining the network. So that's where we call it operate and optimize. So the whole end-to-end life cycle is now going to focus on each CCIE track. So I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but CCIE also is going to tightly align with the 5 architectures that Cisco offers, which is enterprise, service provider, data center, security, and collaboration. So within these 5, there will be all technology architectures will have its CCIE. And in the enterprise, that is one change that we are making now, that for the CCIE enterprise, we will have 2 flavors or 2 branching. So we have the CCIE enterprise infrastructure, and then we have the CCIE enterprise wireless. So if you think about it, CCIE enterprise infrastructure is kind of the old school routing and switching, but more in the sense of all this new architecture of the controller-based architecture and software-defined networking and all of that, automation and stuff. So all of that is embedded, and that's the new CCIE enterprise infrastructure. Wireless is also the old CCIE wireless track, but more in terms of automation and the new evolution in the wireless technology area. So now the whole new design element is completely baked into this one product. And automation is kind of an integral part of every CCIE. So network programmability is important. The other important thing I want to emphasize, the change is the design part is integral, right? I mentioned that it's not a choice anymore, that it's a choice. And that's where I kind of differentiated earlier, that in the CCNP program, it's a choice. You can, if you are a design consultant, you can take one concentration exam which is only focusing on, let's say, enterprise design or wireless design. And then you take the technology core and you're done. You're just becoming a CCNP enterprise. But at the CCIE level, there is no choice. CCIE level, you have to demonstrate skills across the full spectrum of the life cycle. You need to show you're good in design, you need to show you're good in deploy, and you're maintaining the network. So the design is kind of what we call applied design, which is per track. So each technology, whether it's security or collab or data center or enterprise, each track will have its own design component baked into the track or the curriculum.
All right, so let's speak directly to the folks that are already CCIE certified then. How does it affect these folks?
So one good news is that it does not affect people who are already certified. So what we are going to maintain and keep things intact is the structure of the program is same, it's intact. It's how we have organized it or structured it is changing, right? So if you are already a CCIE certified, you're still a CCIE certified. You're once a CCIE, always a CCIE. What will happen is there is only going to be impacting two communities and not impacting in a positive way, but it's just a cosmetic way, that if you are currently a CCIE routing and switching, we will transition you to the CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure certification badge. If you are a CCIE wireless, we will transition you to CCIE Enterprise Wireless certification badge. That's the only change. All the other tracks remain the same. If you are a CCIE collaboration, you're still a CCIE collab. CCIE security is still the same. What is changing is this whole focus of the network lifecycle that I mentioned earlier, and the focus on design, integration in each particular track. And I also wanted to focus on the change of the written exam or what we call technology core. So one thing for the listeners is that CCIE is still a two-step process. The first step is you take a written exam, which is administered at the Pearson VUE. It's a 2-hour exam, right? So there's that written exam followed by a lab exam, which is 8 hours, and you have to come to a Cisco location and do the lab exam. What I want to kind of shed some light and explain a little bit, that the written exam is now changing. The way it is positively changing is again what we said earlier in our previous podcast, that now we are giving incremental recognition. So previously, if you had passed the written exam and you were working towards your lab or towards your CCIE, you didn't get any kind of credit or recognition for halfway through when you pass the written. Now you do. In the new framework, if you pass the new technology core exam, which is the name of the new written exam, so every track, whether you're pursuing CCIE Enterprise, CCIE Security, or CCIE Collaboration, they all have what we call technology core exam. That's the Pearson VUE written exam. If you pass that, you will get your specialist certification badge. So that way, it allows you to kind of showcase and publish in your social media profile that you've already achieved something and you're working towards your lab. That's a positive. And the other advantage is what I call a double dip concept, is that while you're working, because CCIE takes time, for some people it may take 1 year, some people it may take 2 years, some people even take 3 years, depending on the speed and how much time you invest in your learning. So if you are already past the technology core exam, which is the first step towards your CCIE journey, guess what? We are giving you that flexibility and a kind of elasticity that it is what I call double dip concept, that it is also the same exam for the CCNP certification. So this new technology core kind of works two ways for you. It is working for your first step towards your CCIE, and it is halfway to your CCNP program as well. So now, while you're working and preparing for CCIE, you might as well take one of the concentration exam in CCNP and become CCNP and still publish your profile and get that job differentiation and while you're working towards your lab, right? So that is that incremental recognition that I was talking about, that it gives you that more control by using this model.
Well, you've just set it up. So the grand lab, the lab is always something that's been daunting to CCIE folks, so I'm sure there's some changes there too. You want to talk about changes for the lab that the candidate would encounter?
Yeah, and just funnily joking that lab is that monster that nobody wants to face, that we've all been through. I've personally been through, and it is one of the most daunting experience and exam that I have personally ever taken in my professional career, and it has taught me a lot. I mean, trust me when I say this. I mean, it is really one of the most fun exams, most kind of grueling exam that really tests your knowledge and skills and abilities to work under pressure. So yes, the answer is the lab exam format is changing. So people who are familiar with today how we do in the current 8 hours. So one thing that's not changing, remember I told you that the overarching structure is still the same. So it's still an 8-hour exam. But how we deliver the 8 hour is changing. So the way we do today, there are 3 modules in the current CCIE program. The first one we call diagnostic module. Then people go through a troubleshooting module, and then they go through a configuration module. These are the 3 components of the current 8-hour lab. What is changing in February 2020 is this new 8-hour exam is going to be divided in 2 modules only. The first module, which will be 3 hours, will focus on the design aspect of that network lifecycle that I discussed earlier. And then the other 5 hour will focus on the deploy, operate, and optimize aspect of the network lifecycle. So if you think about it, there are two components in the 8-hour lab exam. First one is the day 0 activity, which is where you design a solution, design a network, and the second component of the lab exam is now you actually deploy it and maintain it and kind of optimize it. So that's how the new lab exam is structured in two components.
Well, that sounds exciting. I'll bet you that's going to be grueling and fun as well, would be my anticipation there.
Absolutely. One more thing just came to my mind, what we call progressive storyline. So when you're doing this lab, 8-hour lab, the beauty that we will try to kind of, integrally build in it is progressive storyline. So think about a hypothetical customer or hypothetical story or scenario, right? So you have this customer who's come to you for let's say an enterprise design or a security design or collaboration design. So what we are going to do is continue that progressive storyline throughout the 8-hour lab exam. So you start with the design, you work all the components of design, and then you go into the deploy and operate and optimize. And I know some people will ask the question, well, how does that affect? Because imagine I get the design wrong, hypothetically, like I failed it or I didn't do it the way customer wanted it. They are not linked directly, but they are linked indirectly from a storyline perspective. So it's not like your own work that you did in the 3-hour will continue into the other 5-hour. No. But the storyline will work. It's the same customer, so you are now familiar with the customer story. You know who is the customer, what is their needs, what are the requirements. But the second part of the 5-hour exam will still be focusing on the same customer.
How about recertification? Yusuf, why don't you talk about recertification policy?
Yeah, so recertification policy is definitely changing or updating. So for the CCIE community, as you know, currently the recertification is 2 years. And the way it works is that you are active for 2 years and you have to recertify within the 2-year period. And then if you fail, if it lapses, you get kind of a 1-year extension or what we call suspended mode, right? And that's a very familiar term in the CCIE community, that 2 years is your active CCIE status and then 1 year is the suspended. So what the recertification policy, what is changing now is now we are going to a fixed 3-year certification cycle. Fixed 3 years. So moving forward after February, so all these changes, remember, it is only going to apply after February 2020 cutover. The new recertification policy is 3 years, period. There is no more suspended. So all the people listening for the CCIE who are already CCIE certified, that's an important change, that there is no more suspended. But hang on, don't panic, because people will just jump to like, oh my God, like what do you mean, like no more suspended? What we are simply doing is there is no more suspended, and if you are hypothetically in that period, we will extend your active certification from that 2-year mark to that 3-year mark. So let's take an example. Let's say I'm here right now in June 2019, and my actual 2-year certification expires, let's say, in August 2019. So I still have 2 more months to recertify, correct? Now, hypothetically, I got busy, it lapsed, and I did not recertify. So what happens after August? In September, Yusuf becomes suspended. What we are going to do is, you have 12 months, right? So from August 2019 to August 2020, you are suspended. What we are going to do from February cutover, we are going to turn that or transition that period into active certification. So now your actual certification is no longer expiring in August 2019, but it is expiring in August 2020. You get it? So now you have the full 3 year as a recertification certification period, and within that cycle you have to recertify, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. No, I think that'll be welcome news to a lot of folks as well.
Yeah, and one other important change, Brad, in the recertification program is that, and this is specifically applying to the CCIE population or the CCIE community, is what I call how the recertification date works. So I just gave an example of August, that let's say my certification was expiring August 2019, and with this new policy it will expire in August 2020. Now before August 2020 I need to recertify, right? So if you do the math, let's say in exactly August I take an exam and I recertify. Traditionally today the way it works is we call it anniversary date. Anniversary date is that August that we are kind of hooking ourselves to, that if regardless of when I take my exam, whether I took in the month of May, month of April, month of June, my recertification gets pushed out from August 2020 3 years. So August 2021, August 2022, August 2023. That's the math, right, for the CCIE community, that, well, it's going to push out 3 years. That is another change. So please take a note of this change. We are no longer going to maintain the anniversary date. We are maintaining the anniversary date for different reasons, but for recertification purpose, we are now going to monitor event date. We are going to monitor the event date. Event date is actually when you do perform your recertification activity, whether you are doing continuing education or whether you're taking exam. So let's go back to the same example. I was supposed to recertify before August 2020 in my previous example. So let's say in the month of June, I attend Cisco Live. I collected some credits for continuing education. In July, I attended a training. And now I have enough credits, continuing education credits, to recertify. So it depends on that month when I complete my requirement, whether it's completing via the exam part or whether with the continuing education part. But if I completed in July, then the 3 year will be extended from that point, if that makes sense. It's not the anniversary date that we will push out your extension. We will push out from the date you complete the recertification requirement.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm sure you're going to want to talk about this too, Yusuf. Do you want to discuss the emeritus or the lifetime tenure folks as well?
Yes, that's another new program that we are introducing. So we also had a lot of requests that, people who have been maintaining a program for a long time, what are you going to do for us? So good news for those people. Now we have a new program called the Emeritus Lifetime Program or the Emeritus Tenure Program. So if you have maintained your certification for 20 years, either you were active or emeritus or a combination of it, active and emeritus. As long as you have maintained it for 20 years, now you have a choice to go into the emeritus lifetime tenure. And the biggest advantage for that is there is no fee. Now, one other thing, Brad, also comes to my mind is what are the changes in the continuing education program? So I would really encourage people to go on our website and follow, because continuing education program is also evolving and we are offering some extension, because for the current CCIE population, a lot of people enjoyed and appreciated the continuing education program. So first, good news is there's going to be no administrative fee after the February cutover. So there is no fee. The other change is the requirement. So currently, the requirement for the CCIE population was that you need 100 continuing education credits. Now, remember I mentioned about the 3-year, so now you get an extra 1 year in your active. So due to that additional year, and now the recertification is 3-year, we increase the requirement for the continuing education credit to 120. So from 100 to 120 credits you need to recertify. So depending on how you achieve and combine, that is another new change, that now we are giving you the flexibility to mix and match. It's a hybrid model. Currently, the CCIE, either they used to take the exam or they used to do continuing education. But now we are saying flexible. You can do half because you need to get 120 credits. You can take one exam and one training, 2 exams and one training, 1 exam and 1 Cisco Live, as long as you achieve the 120 credits. So that's another powerful, flexible option that people can recertify and continue to maintain.
Great, and this has been a great conversation about the expert level certifications. But we gotta, if you're up for it, Yusuf, can you also speak directly to the design folks, the CCDEs that are out there that'll be wondering how this affects them?
Yeah, absolutely. Because most people might be wondering that now that design is embedded in the CCIE lab and the CCIE curriculum, what happens to the CCD? So as we say right now that we constantly enhance our portfolio, and now that we've included the design, it does not mean that CCD is going away. So we are always evaluating our portfolio, and we will continue to make changes as needed. But at this time, the CCD and the CCR certification will remain as they are today. So no change there.
Well, this has been another wonderful podcast, and as Yusuf mentioned a couple of times, there's a lot more information available to you at cisco.com/go/nextlevel, or you can just punch in CiscoLearningNetwork.com, and we'll have all the information there, as well as we'll be ready to answer your questions and try to keep bringing you the information that you'll need to make this transition with us. Yusuf, what a great conversation. Really appreciate you doing this series with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brad.
That's it for our interview with Yusuf about the changes being made to the CCIE Cisco Certifications Program. To learn more about the new certification and training portfolio, please visit the Cisco Learning Network, where you'll find more resources explaining the changes and a community network ready to support you and answer your questions. Please subscribe to our podcast to get more information about changes being made to Cisco certifications, and also get the news and information you need about different types of technology. And if you could take a minute to leave us a review on iTunes, we'd appreciate it. Thanks for listening.